If you struggle with food, I want to tell you that there is absolutely nothing wrong with you and you are not alone. In this video, I'm going to share more about my own experience going from yo-yo dieting and binge eating to finding freedom with food. And I'll also share my top 3 tips so that you can make peace with food yourself. For the best advice for creating a happy, healthy, and fulfilling life, subscribe to my channel and hit the bell so you can be notified of when I post a new video. Hey there, so if you don't know me, my name is Kia, and for the past 4 years, I've made it my mission to help hardworking men and women break free from yo-yo dieting and binge eating so that they can make peace with food and their bodies. I'm also the founder of the Food and Body Love one-on-one and group coaching program. And I know from my own experience how amazing it is to feel free with food, to feel like you can go travel, you can go to a party, you can live your life and not worry about calorie counting or not worrying about are you going to binge or not, and just having the emotional and mental freedom to dedicate to the things that you truly care about. Okay. But it wasn't always this way for me. You see, I started dieting when I was 11 years old because as a young Filipino American girl, I learned from the women in my life that you had to be thin in order to be accepted. And I would watch my mom and her friends go on the latest diets. I think the Atkins diet was really popular around that time. When one of them would lose weight, they would get praised and cheered on. And then when one of them would gain weight, they would, there'd be comments made about her. Or I would hear my mom or one of her friends just saying, oh, I'm so fat, I've gained weight, and beat themselves up. And so I learned from a young age that this is what you do as a woman. You go on a diet, you get thin, this cycle. And I started doing that. I started restricting my food. I started intensely exercising. And as I lost weight, I began to get compliments from the people at school and then my family. But inevitably, when the opposite would happen, when I would finally have one of those forbidden foods and I would binge eat and gain the weight back, then I would get the opposite. People would make comments as well about my weight, and it wasn't a fun place to be. And of course, as often goes with dieting, I would blame myself. I would say I just don't have enough willpower. And if I tried again or I found the perfect way of eating, then I would look perfect and be perfect and all would be well. That didn't happen for how many years, right? And you know what? The darkest time for me was actually in college because college for a lot of people is some of the most fun and exciting times of their life. For me, I regret to say I didn't have that experience in college. It was some of the most stressful and loneliest times of my life where I began to use food as my main companion whenever I was stressed out, whenever I felt lonely, whenever I had to stay up late to study. And I found myself coming home, 5 nights a week from school, sitting on the couch, eating like entire bags of chips, entire sleeves of cookies, rummaging through my roommate's stuff, and just eating to the point where I felt so sick and disgusted, but I just felt like I was completely out of control and I couldn't stop. And I was so ashamed of what I was doing that I didn't tell anyone for years. I remember hiding wrappers, hiding the evidence of my binges by putting them in interesting places, different places around the apartment, or sticking them at the bottom of the garbage can. And, from there, it started as this kind of one-time thing. It started to pick up. And eventually the binges would get weirder and scarier, where I remember in my 3rd year of college, I started leaving my apartment to get food. I started getting in my car, driving outside to a drive-thru or the fast food chain. And that really freaked me out because up until that point, I had been able to control my binges to what was in my apartment. the saddest part of all of this. Sure, there was the weight gain. Sure, there was the emotional, turmoil, the guilt, the shame, but the loneliness. I just remember having series of days where I would binge eat and then not want to talk to anyone, where I would isolate myself, where my friends would invite me out, but I'd say no, I don't feel like it. And I regret that I really missed out on some valuable times in college because of my disordered relationship with food. And after college, I remember there was a particular day where, this is after I graduated, and I was still binge eating, maybe not as often, but I was still binge eating. And there was this particular day where I was looking at the mirror, looking at my body. I think it was like post the binge. I was like in some exercise clothes and looking at my bloated stomach and just feeling so angry, right? There's like, I don't know if you've ever noticed this like voice in your head that beats you up, but that voice was so strong. The self-loathing was so strong, saying, what the hell are you doing? Like, what the fuck is wrong with you? Why can't you figure this out? And I just, oh my God, it just, that voice, it just was so strong that day. And I just remember a particular moment where I just decided I had enough, right? Like, whatever I was doing, it wasn't working. And I decided that I had to stop hiding, I had to stop isolating myself, and I had to get help. Because whatever I was doing wasn't working, and I was determined to find the right way to resolve this. And if I didn't, then I would finally accept that maybe this is something I would never overcome. I began to look for support, tried different groups, books. But really, I think what helped a ton was I worked with a coach who helped me a lot with the mindset and helped me realize that so much of my disordered relationship with food had to do with my thinking, had to do with my beliefs, and had to do with how my life and how I was living my life was totally out of sync with who I truly was. These days, I no longer diet. I no longer restrict my food. In fact, I eat pretty intuitively, where I really just mostly tune into what my body tells me it wants. And I cannot tell you how freeing it is to have that, to be able to, I love traveling, I love dancing, I love all these different things, that I have the mental energy, the emotional energy to really dedicate to the things I love, including supporting my clients in finding their peaceful relationship with food. So like I said, I wanted to share my own journey to give you the context of where I've come from. And also, I wanted to share my top 3 tips that I've used and that have helped my clients find peace with food. So tip number 1 is to be kind and curious with yourself. To know that your relationship with food is its way for a reason. That food is serving a certain purpose in your life. And if you get curious, you can really find out why it is the way it is. When we're not hungry and in response to strong emotions may indicate that we are using food as a coping mechanism. And if you don't know that term, it's basically a strategy that someone has learned as a way to deal with trauma or emotional distress. So for some people, that's food. For other people, maybe that's video games, sex, gambling. So there are these coping mechanisms that perhaps are more negative, but there are also coping mechanisms that can be seen as more positive. Perhaps that's taking a walk, meditation, talking to a friend. And so while having a coping mechanism isn't necessarily bad, it's more about looking at what the long-term effects are. Is it taking a toll on our health, on our relationships, and our overall sense of confidence and self-efficacy? Because I know using food as a coping mechanism often does. And the thing is, many of us grew up in families where we were basically taught not to feel our emotions or to be aware of them. If you ever were told to suck it up or to stop crying, so many of us grew up believing that our emotions were a sign of weakness and that the best thing to do is to cover them up. So the first thing I want to recommend to you in this journey of healing your food, and healing your relationship with food, is just to be more kind and curious with yourself. Because it doesn't mean that something's wrong with you. It just means that you've learned some strategies, you've learned some habits that perhaps work to an extent, but are not getting you what you truly want in the long term. And once you get really curious about why a pattern is showing up the way it is, then you can meet the underlying need. And if you do that, then the binging and having to use food as a coping mechanism will naturally start to dissipate. So one way you can start practicing kindness and curiosity with yourself is to keep a food journal on what you're eating and why. So let me clarify what this is. So anytime you have a desire to eat, I want you to write down the time of day. I want you to write down what it is, and I also want you to write down why. So are you craving something because you are actually physically hungry? Are you wanting to eat because you're tired, or you're stressed out from a hard, long day, you had a ton of meetings? But by getting curious and asking why, this can bring to light the reasons why you are using the food the way you are. And it is going to be valuable data for what you can do next. That brings me to tip number 2, which is to start moving away from dieting and really strict food rules, and to start moving towards your innate body wisdom, to tune in to how your body talks to you, specifically with hunger and fullness. And I'm not saying that all this external information, diets, nutrition, all of that are bad, but I think so often what happens is a lot of us have learned to just listen to external information without really checking in with the internal wisdom that we have right here with our bodies. So I really invite you to start paying attention and getting familiar with what true hunger, physical hunger, and what true satisfaction and fullness feel like. So one thing you can do is, I want you to think about a time when you were really, really physically hungry. Maybe you were traveling and your meal schedule was off, right? You couldn't, the restaurant was far away, so your meal was a lot later than normal. Maybe you had a busy day at work, you didn't realize you skipped a meal, and so you were actually really, really hungry. So if you want, go ahead and close your eyes and just think about a time when you were actually physically hungry, and tuning into how that felt in your body. Did you feel like maybe a grumbling in your stomach, a sense of emptiness in your stomach? For some people, it might be kind of some lightheadedness, a throat sensation. My favorite one is when you're physically hungry, food tastes really, really good. So perhaps when you did finally get a chance to eat things, your food tastes amazing. It's like you have special seasonings. It's like hunger is the best seasoning. Now I want you to think about a time when you overdid it with food. Perhaps you were at a buffet, or perhaps it was the holidays and you overate. Perhaps it was a binge. And just really, if you want to go ahead and close your eyes, go ahead and do that, and really tune into how your body felt. Did you feel your stomach was really full to the point that there's kind of a pain sensation? Did your stomach feel distended? Was it more of a mental thing where you heard the thoughts, feeling a little bit guilty or anxious about overeating? How was it that you knew that you overate and you overdid it? So I had a client who basically we did that. She started moving away from all these arbitrary rules that she's picked up over the years, and really started tuning into how her body felt. Within 8 weeks of working together, and we were working together for about 10, she basically found that her binges were disappearing. And this is the first time she had that sensation in months. And she also reported feeling more trusting and in tune with her body. So I really invite you to just start paying attention to how your body speaks to you, specifically with hunger and fullness. So my last tip for you is especially for those y'all who identify with being a lone wolf, because I personally used to identify and take pride in that. But I will be honest with you, it's part of the reason why I struggled so long with my relationship with food. And so my last tip is to get support. Because as a human being, you are part of a social species, and you are not meant to exist in isolation. And time again, social isolation has been shown to be correlated with mental illness, physical illness like high blood pressure, diabetes, Alzheimer's, and more. Binge eating too is part of that. Another reason why support is so important is just the accountability piece. Just that accountability is proven time and time again to help you follow through and succeed on your goals. There's also this study where they found that if you have a specific accountability appointment with somebody, it increases your chances of follow through by 95%. Pretty cool. So why am I saying this? Because I just know from personal experience that, sure, with feeling powerless with food and feeling heavy and feeling, bloated and all that, there's the physical sensations, but a lot of people don't talk about the emotional piece of the loneliness, the shame, the guilt. And I honestly think that state of being is one of the most painful experiences so many of us can experience as a human being. And it's so unnecessary, because you're not alone. You're definitely not alone in this experience that you're having with food. So I recommend finding some support, whether that be a group, whether that be someone you trust, whether that be a professional, and know that finding support is not a sign of weakness. It's actually a sign of courage and bravery. It's really intelligent as well. And you really deserve it, absolutely. You deserve the support. So if I can be a support resource for you as well, please do not hesitate to contact me. I'm happy to chat with you or to help point you to some resources. So feel free to look below. I have some information there. Now you know more about my own journey with food, as well as my 3 top tips to overcome binge eating, emotional eating, and find peace with food. But how do you put these things into practice? So because you've stayed to the end of the video, I'd love to share a gift with you, which is a copy of my food journaling template that I often use with my clients to help them build awareness about their relationship with food. So if you'd like a copy of that, check the description. There's going to be a link to get a copy. And if you like this video, I ask that you show me some love by liking the video below. Please subscribe to my channel, please comment, and also please share this video with anyone who you think would really benefit from hearing the message I have to share. So thank you so much. I want to say, stay well, eat well, and savor all that life has to give to you, because life is simply too short not to. See ya!